everybody to the live. Today's guest is Kevin, or MisterE. Kevin, as we start any topic, and today's topic is voice acting in gaming, I asked people where they stepped into gaming. When did gaming enter their lives, and when did gaming end up being like your hobby, one of your serious endeavors?
All right, yeah, I've got a story for that. So with my first wife, first child, she had some medical challenges where she had to do a lot of resting, right? A lot of bed rest. And we'd sit on the couch, and this is before the days of streaming. So we would get the Netflix disc in the mail, one disc at a time. And when you're trying to binge watch a series, what are you gonna do while you wait for the next one to come in the mail, right?
Like, you have only so much patience for The Wire to show up, Kevin. Like,
Exactly.
like, yeah.
So we would play a game at the table, but we only had a handful of the classics, right? Like Trivial Pursuit, Pictionary, Scrabble, these type things. And I was getting bored and frustrated with the fact that there's not a lot mainstream two-player friendly games. So I go on the Google and I'm looking up two-player friendly games. I come across this resource called Board Game Geek. Perhaps you've heard of this thing. And there's all these message threads of people that are posting great two-player games of all these things I'd never heard of before. And at the top of most of these lists is a game called Carcassonne. So I look online. Amazon was a thing at this time. This was 2000 and... when was he born? 2006. I had to do the math.
So 2006. I had already been watching One Piece for 8 years and playing Dungeons and Dragons for 30.
So here I am, I get Carcassonne, and I'm just enamored with the fact that a board game table experience can be so unique and engaging and thinky and crunchy. Like, everyone likes to use that word, crunchy. So that got me in. Of course, I had to get expansions because now we get a different game experience, and that I just never stopped from there. So, and now I have the wonders of Mrs. E, and I think it was like our third date. I invited her to play a board game at the table. Not even letting her see my hoard of board games that was hidden in a closet, just in case that was too nerdy.
More reasons than can be stated. Shannon is too good for you. And
yes,
we will...
100%. 100%.
Let's talk about Carcassonne for a second. I think Carcassonne, in the modern lexicon of discussion of like gateway games, I think people always jump to Catan and Ticket to Ride. But I'm of the era that it should be tile plays. It should be Carcassonne. Like, Carcassonne would be the game that I would get people started on their journey with. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was the one even still to this day, when someone is kind of new to board gaming, I'll say, you know what, let's start with this. Because it's accessible, very easy to learn.
It's got little meeples in it.
It's got cute little meeples in it. Yep.
What's that big meeple?
So yeah, that is the one that got me into the hobby, and
yeah, that's under those.
My favorite to teach.
That's a great topic for a video. Classic games that even 20 years later, or gateway games, I'll still play. I don't think you could get me to play Catan. I'm gonna play Ticket to Ride for Ticket to Ride Legacy, but I think I would still play Carcassonne. Like. Oh, yeah. I might not suggest Carcassonne as my first whatever, but if you said, hey, if you took that out, I'd be like, all right, then we're doing that.
Well, this is 2024, and last year's Spiel des Jahres, Dorf Romantic, is really just co-op Carcassonne, right?
Probably.
I haven't played it, but I've seen it, and it looks like it's a fun experience. Like, yeah. Instead of trying to get points for yourself, you're trying to work together to get your objectives. So there's a reason it's so good.
Yeah, no, I'm on board. I am on board with the Carcassonne. So all right, so that is a great way segue into then today's topic. Of course, is voice acting in gaming. So then, when did voice acting enter your life, Kevin?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so it was post Shannon at the time of my life. She had gotten me reintroduced and reinterested in theater after a super long hiatus. I had a
Okay.
bad experience in theater in high school that I was like, I don't ever need to do this again. And then she's like, you're such a character. You like to do these voices. You like to read your stories to your kids. You should do more stuff. Do
You're
more
filled
stuff.
with so much drama. You just bring the drama all the time, Kevin.
And so it was like right before I had met her, I got involved doing a radio show reenactment at the local community theater of the Maltese Falcon
Oh,
and loved every second of it. And so Shannon's like, do more, do more, do more. And I came across this site called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, LibriVox. LibriVox?
LibriVox.
LibriVox. In which people will volunteer their time to convert texts in the public domain into audiobooks for people to enjoy for free. So
Nice.
there's no issues with copyright, old textbooks, whatever, so that people who have difficulty reading or just like the experience of an audiobook, it's totally free. You don't need a library card. You don't need any subscription fees. You can go right to there and download an entire audiobook, and you may get different people for different chapters or one person read the whole kit and caboodle. And so I read some works of poetry there and had fun doing it. So going from there, it just kind of kept adding a little bit more, doing more radio dramas. And then again, it was Shannon again who came across a video on TikTok of all places of this lady who walked people through the process of how you can become a voice actor for audiobooks professionally, semi-professionally. Yeah. Top-seated amateur through Audible. And now my third book is done and uploaded and going through QA, and it should be live at the end of the month. And that is called Rediscovering Vancouver. A gentleman who grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, grew up, moved to the United States, had to go back because his dad was passing from an illness post-COVID, and rediscovered the land and how beautiful it was, and was telling all these amazing just narrative stories. And so that will be out soon. And I'm working on another sci-fi fantasy kind of realm book for an author right now.
That's awesome. I had only snippets of that story or inklings of that story. And yes, I'm glad I asked. And so, for folks who are just joining us, today's topic is the relationship between voice acting and gaming. Okay. We now know, especially with Baldur's Gate, taking Game of the Year, The Witcher, and all this the actors who personify characters is such a big deal for computer games. Like, I cannot play Fallout without hearing Ron Perlman, like, war is inevitable. I have to do.
Yes. There's nothing more awkward when you go to play a game and it's a completely different voice actor for someone that you know and love.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, like in my nightmares, Ron Perlman's voiceover for Fallout is done by Kathy Griffin, and they're like, I have to immediately.
I see. Here, Low Level Adventure says, you know what we need is some way to play video games non-digitally, maybe on some kind of like board.
And don't feed the trolls, Kevin. Chris is just
You were just
Chris
talking about
just
this
needs
video
to be
game.
affected.
Pass this by.
Yes. Uga Chaka has been fantastic. Thanks for sounding in and trolling Kevin. Chris, you can troll Kevin as much as you want. I'm old. You should leave me alone.
Oh yeah, we paint on video together.
Yeah. So the next place that people are running more and more into voice acting, of course, is TTRPGs. Be it a convention, be it your favorite podcast, be Dimension 20, whatever you're doing. You hear people bringing their voice talents to their characters. Okay. the one of the weirdest things for me is during the dark times, I did 2 years on a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and when in like in quote unquote in character as Pyric Starfinder, who is
Pirates
an
Starfinder.
elf who talks like this because he's from the north.
Don't you know?
Oh, you betcha, yeah. If fireball, eh? So I did that for 2 years, and I think Pyric is like way to the left of my normal like speaking voice. But I will go to conventions, and people will like stop me dead in my tracks and go, "Are you Pyric Starfinder?"
You don't sound like Pirate Starfighter.
I'm like, who wants to know? And for me, it was always a lark. Like I was like, Pyric is like emotionally challenged, very complicated and insane, right? And I just thought I would give him the most pleasant Minnesota accent that I could do.
Does he get plus fives for casseroles?
No. The show was called Roleplay 8 Charisma, and I was the 8
Hey,
Charisma.
charisma.
Clearly the 8 Charisma. It was clearly
Well,
the 8 Charisma.
so TTRPGs lend themselves very well because you have a character, you're building a character, it has backstory. It seems like you feel the need to want to talk like that individual or make something silly or have a. In fact, I was listening to a podcast, Jake Johnson, actor who's on New Girl, right? And he does this talking advice podcast. I can't think of what it is. Here to help. Anyway, a lady came on and she's in a RPG group, and she had decided her character needed an accent, and she felt like her accent wasn't good enough for the group and wanted some advice. And so they were asking her about, and she's somewhere in Indiana. So it's obviously a need and a thing that people playing these tabletop RPGs. And I can't speak from experience because I've yet to have played one. But I feel like doing the acting and doing these voiceover things that I've done when I'm playing board games that have narration,
Yep.
I can't help but want to do the same thing, right? I want to have that extra experience of hearing characterization.
All right. So, I have had this experience with some theater people that it's too much like theater and not enough. It's like the uncanny valley. It upsets them.
Yeah?
Yeah, like just give me a script if I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do. like there's too much freedom. It's too much like this kind of stuff. Pat is talking, of course, about entertainers playing Dungeons and Dragons is a different category than players. But this idea that personifying a character starts with a voice. Now, I have some very bad tips, and you can help me rate them on what you think people should do for getting their voice acting started in their own session. Like, I'm infamous with my creative director of sitting down to a board game at Protospiel, Minnesota, and the two of us will just do it in character the entire. And we warn the person whose board game this is that suddenly we will role play anything. We're those people. Like we'll role play anything people, right? It doesn't matter the situation. We're gonna get in character. So, my first one is if you feel like it's a tough ask for you to embrace an accent, instead pick a location in your nose, throat, and mouth where instead your character speaks.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I would never push an accent if you don't feel comfortable yourself in that accent.
right. Yeah. That being said, so understanding the very first, like the physicality of where sound comes from in your face is a good education. And I myself have multiple voices depending on the level of technology. Like this is my TikTok voice. And the TikTok voice is basically top of my mouth, a little bit at the very top of the throat and down. It's up here, right? It's not like all the way, like it's not falsetto where I'm like like as comfortably as it can be, sort of, but it is nasally and up. But my phone voice, which is very relaxed, is down here. Like Kevin, you've got to experience both of these things. Like if I'm not presenting, like this is the voice that I talk to people in the room with, right? But then simultaneously, if it's a character, then it drops down even further. Like people don't expect the little Asian body to have such a very deep voice, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So my first piece of advice is you can be yourself, but just pick which part of your throat or mouth you want to talk to. Like Pyrex Starfinder, he's way up here, like practically at the very front of my face, because you don't know this if you're from like the Nord, but everybody thinks this is what polite speech sounds like. How do you feel about that advice for picking? Do you pick different like registers for when you are going to do an audiobook? Or do you go, I'm just going to be my baritone sexiness. I'm going to bring my Barry White to everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, my normal neutral talking voice with just a little bit of a hint of bass at the end, like when I drop down, especially at the end of sentences, is when I just do basic narration. When you're reading non-character text, right? But then different characters, you have to pull nuances and subtleties, and you want to find potentially accents. But again, I'm directing Shakespeare right now, right? And I told all of my actors from day one, I don't want an attempt at Shakespearean accent.
Oh yeah.
I don't want an attempt at British accent, because invariably people will expect that and will try, and they either can't hold it all the way through. Right? They drop it mid-words.
I can't hold an accent.
We can't understand what they're saying because it's not their native language. So I would say, yes, by all means, if you can find a different register, a different octave, don't focus so much on necessarily getting the lingo of the location right, but make sure whatever it is that you're saying, you enunciate enough that everyone at the table can understand your words. That's more critical to me.
Shakespeare's also put together with iambic pentameter or with the a certain pattern of words that we don't use anymore. You don't even have to like try. You're going to fall into a cadence of speech that is going to end up, even if you just pronounce all the syllables, you're going to be in a different speech just because you don't use those words in the same way that we do now. And just to get that timing right and still convey the emotion, you don't have to do any more. Now, the troll, Chris, is saying, hey, I sound exactly the same in conventions. This is my convention voice. It is the one that will pierce the heavens. You can hear me across all of Gen Con with this voice.
It's your classroom voice, as we call it in education, right? Your teacher voice.
Yes, my classroom or teacher voice is the one that I use to get people's attention. So Chris is both correct or not. Like in the room doesn't mean in the convention hall. Yeah.
No, I think I have now been exposed to 5 different Seppy voices.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few.
So that was your tip or rule number 1. What else do you have for people?
All right. So, if you're going to assume a different way of speaking, and I don't even think it is necessarily an accent, as because that obviously is charged in various ways. You don't want to come across as demeaning other people or whatever it is. But let's say you're taking on a character. The number one way to try to keep yourself reminded of the character or how you want to do things is have a key phrase that hits the important parts in your mouth or speech to get you to practice that character's way of speaking.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let me think of a different character.
While you
Uh,
think, when doing different characterizations, I will record a paragraph of that text in that character's voice and save it in my back pocket as I, because it may be a few pages or a few days or a few scenes in a game later that it's like, I want to make sure I'm doing this true to my previous experience. So I got to go listen to it for a little bit, right? I know a lot of people will say when they try to do an accent, if they hear it a lot, then they're better at nailing that British accent or that Irish accent. When if they don't hear it, they really screw it up. So yeah, I will lock down and record that
I
sentence.
think yours is one even step farther. I am like one like for pirate it's feel the power of the Nord. And that hits all the like one catchphrase will help you like land your character in an RPG setting. Like it's also very hysterical for the group. I love a callback. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like um, pick something that you can feel every time you run into it. I think uh, let's see. I think Balthazar had one in one of our Lone Gamer of the Apocalypse. I'm sure Flower had one too, and I think Flower is like a less edgy version of my teacher voice. Um, yeah. So that would be picking a phrase that reminds you of how that person deals with feeling, situations, and vowels, like something with a lot of vowels in it that you could return to in less than a sentence that you don't feel super weird practicing right before it's your turn. Like
Yeah.
saying it in your head, like feeling it like, oh, feel the power of the Nord. Oh, okay, all right, I'm doing this. All right, yeah. So that would be my that'd be my number two. My number three would be go back and listen to what you've done before. I know I have to do this for the stuff that I do with you. I yeah. Don't you know? Yeah, don't you know? It's like an after phrase. Yeah, absolutely. You
So
betcha.
is that it? We've got three.
There's a fourth one. Um, After listening to what you've done to be consistent, this probably should have been my number one. Is just have fun with it. Um, Everybody is understanding. If you're having fun, everybody will allow you to practice your voice. Um, I think my favorite quotable TED talk lately has been about how to get more fun out of fun. No fun in gaming. Jared and I talk about the first state, which is the magic circle. And the magic circle is one of these three states to get most of your fun out of your fun. Number one is enter the magic circle and all the properties therein. And if you, Kevin, have we talked about the magic circle?
No.
Okay. It's from Johann Huizinga. It is from a book that he wrote in the 20s or whatever. Jared can correct me. It's called Homo Ludus. I picked it up for very different reasons than what the book actually is about. And you're supposed to laugh, Kevin. That is actually funny.
I'm
Uh,
trying to write this down so I can go look this up and read this later. I was
in
not
it, he
paying
talks
attention.
about in it he talks about
Johann
the state.
something.
In it, he talks about Huizinga talks about the state that we must enter to have fun. Okay,
Okay.
and that is how you change mental states. And how you change mental states is a really, really interesting discussion on multiple levels, and it applies to this voice acting because skills that you acquire in one mental state have a hard time being transferred to other places.
Okay.
So if you are having fun and this is the environment that you were like, this is also why practice and people who can do well in practice versus people who don't do like have a problem applying those same skills in a competitive setting, right? This is why when you do test taking, they try to make you simulate the test taking
No, yeah, yeah,
environment.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all these same things, like this mental state. And so,
I tell you a little secret for Mr. E here.
yes.
Okay, so um, getting that internal fear switch to turn off, right? The performance anxiety fear. Back in college, I found that before I would like, because I had a jazz combo, we'd go and play different venues, and that fear anxiety would just like kind of push real high. One whiskey drink before I got on, and all of a sudden that frontal lobe was just like, you know what, you got this.
That's another mental state.
And I found like before I go on stage and acting, like that that anxiety just kind of pulls up and pulls up, pulls up, pulls up. Not to say that people should do this.
Obviously, we care about people being of the age that they need to for like.
Oh yes, 100%. Yeah, not that you should do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But something that worked for me to help me calm that anxiety down. Then it turns off that frontal lobe for me just enough that I can still make good decisions, right? I can still be right in the moment, and not push the boundary of taste too far. Sometimes that anxiety can be crippling. And I know, especially for doing this, when we're talking about doing voice in a narrative experience at a table, and with your friends is one thing, but still people will have that anxiety, even amongst their own group of friends, that if I'm going to try to do a character, I'm going to be judged. Above and beyond my gameplay, I'm going to be judged at my performance ability. Whether it's real or not, people will have that internal fear and that internal anxiety. And that is a hard obstacle to overcome for a lot of people.
It is. And giving yourself tricks and and this is going to go to the other three areas. All right. So the magic circle, to enter the magic circle, number one, you need to do so voluntarily. You cannot have fun if you are forced. Okay? Number two, you need to feel safe to be having fun. If you are looking out for your well-being, and if you are too self-aware, those kinds of things will kill fun. Okay? Number three, there needs to be a little bit of risk involved. Okay? It doesn't have to be real loss, but in a game, there's a chance of losing. You know, like the die roll can go badly, so forth and whatnot. This level of risk is one of those things. Okay, so that's the magic circle. Now, while in the magic circle, what can you do to elevate the amount of fun that you're having? And there was a TED Talk about this, and I think it's great. And I want to spread this news. Like, there's three areas to help elevate your fun. Okay? Number one, okay, when you're in that state, allow yourself to be even more in that state by giving up inhibitions on like self-consciousness and how you see yourself. Like, if you're all in a place of trust and forwarding trust to other people, you'll be able to have more fun. Mm-hmm. Basically, creating a trusting environment where you are allowed to experiment, like you used to be able to experiment all the time when you were a kid. Okay?
Yeah, play imagination. Absolutely.
Okay? Number two, connection. Feeling connected to something or someone or some things larger than yourself feels great, and it elevates your fun. So if you're at a gaming convention, you understand you are at the pulse of this living, breathing nerdgasm. And that kind of shenanigans allows you to feel like, and you're making new friends, you're experiencing new titles, your world is getting larger. Okay?
Oh, yeah. You see so many more people being true to themselves that you feel, you know, it's okay for me to be a little bit more true about myself.
I would say, the true to yourself has this idea that there's one true self. I like the people being their best self, like, and doing the thing that they care most about, right? I like that. Like, people are complicated, and when we talk about Shakespeare, a person is a multifaceted individual with lots of, like, you know, like ducks and turns and sharp edges and so forth. The true shape of a person is not spherical, round, and
I don't
cuddly.
know, but there's also something to be said to be able to go to those events and those experiences to be the anti-hero, to be what is, you said, your best self, to be the worst person you can be, because you know you'll never be that in real life.
Yeah.
It's okay to let that emotion and that aggression have an experience and shine a light, because you would never do that kind of thing.
Make sure you get permission of everybody at the table before that, but absolutely, like,
Yes.
hey, this is a one shot for bad guys. Be your worst, okay, all right, let that go. And so number 3 that applies to voice acting conventions and how to get the most fun out of fun is flow. How to stay in the moment and feel not distracted or dragged out of what you are doing. Okay? And this is the number one selling point on a gaming convention. And that is you are in an environment where you have paid to go. The environment is just this thing. And you are allowed to unabashedly and completely, for social reasons, enjoy the game that you're in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, unless your kids call 14 times during that game, you're not picking up. It can wait until the game is over. That kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Do we both have the same game in our background?
I don't know why. What is it? That's Canvas,
Yeah.
and then the sequel. Why is it should be hanging up on the wall, Seppy? It's got a thing on the back, literally to hang it up as art.
Yes, it's definitely a thing. All right. So, today's topic for today, of course, is the relationship between voice acting and gaming. And we gave some quick tips about how to start incorporating that in what you do. Okay? You can see, like a perfect example of this, the earlier idea, just dropping your register, of course, is the Batman voice. The Christian Bale Batman
I am
voice.
darkness.
I am the dark. Like that. I would
the
start
Baptist
like if
Church
I
of the
had to do that for an entire season, I would go. I am the darkness.
You know, it's kind of ironic. Just last night, I had a conversation with my actors, and they have a very deep, right voice, and they were pushing it a little bit extra, a little bit like growly, gravelly. And I said, I love that, but I am so concerned about your physical well-being that you're going to strain your voice. You're going to crack your voice. So know your limits, right? You don't have to always push and perform for the sake of the experience if it's not going to be good for you. We can still get that joy of you and your voice and your experience without you having to hurt yourself.
Also, you can train to get to that level of being able to maintain a certain something. People are really shocked how much voice I have left at the end of a convention. Like, considering you can hear me, like Gamehole was a perfect example. I was at literally one other end of the convention, and people at the other end say, "Yeah, I can still hear."
You should still invest, again, for your own well-being, Seppy, since you do lots of conventions. You should invest in a headset with a little speaker.
I should.
Absolutely. It was a couple Gen Cons back. Mrs. E and I were demoing for Stonemaier games through MeepleSource. And they gave each one of us a little headset with a little mic and a little speaker so we could talk at a reasonable volume, at a normal voice, and everyone in our group could hear, instead of trying to talk over the roar of the room. And it was a tiny little extra. I mean, it probably would have cost maybe $20 a person, right, to do this for your DMs and GMs and whatever they are. But that extra little piece can really, really help you and your health. And the reason I'm saying this is being in education. I have lots of teacher friends because I'm a teacher as well. Many of them have had voice strain or have had nodules, right, on their vocal cords from talking consistently over and over for so long at a larger volume that it adds and adds and adds to that strain. Just like carpal tunnel is realist for people who work with their hands and type, voice strain is a realization. So for your health, Seppy, please do me a solid.
I
Get
think
yourself a little
everybody,
microphone
Kevin,
speaker.
would be excited if I was finally silenced. Because I am the darkness.
We'll just have to get you a whiteboard.
Yeah. This is how I'm feeling for the rest of this.
Mouse, cheese,
this
cat,
ride.
cucumber.
Mouse, cheese, cat, cucumber. Aw, Pat, you're amazing. Like, which one would you like? A number 2, a number 6? All right. So, I don't think I started adding voices to characters until like I was role playing for like 20 years before I decided characters need voices. Yeah, I think that's a much more modern phenomenon for people my age than like tell a good story. If a voice helps you get into character, do it. If it doesn't, don't do it. But know that coming up, the future, we're gonna have like real-time things with your mic that you can talk into, and that is gonna have an AI who's gonna spit out real-time the accent that you want them to have.
Oh yeah. A babblefish. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's coming.
it is definitely a thing. Yeah. Okay. So, let's talk a little bit more voice acting and nerding out. So, why this ended up being a topic is because Kevin wanted to come back to the live because I like talking to him, but he recruited me for something insane. Kevin, do you want to talk about your history with the Fenton radio players and why you thought this was a good idea? I waited till the live died down a little bit before I brought
I
this
see
up.
that. I see that. How convenient. So I mentioned earlier in our talk here that I kind of got back into theater by doing a radio show program through our community theater. They did and still do once a year a recreation of an old-time 1940s, 1930s radio show drama where all the actors get on stage like they're in the old radio booth, and it's open to the audience, and they have a physical script in front of them, and they, as they read their lines, they drop pages, but they're voice acting, right? And I got the joy of experiencing that in the Maltese Falcon being Sam Spade. And for that entity, for that local community theater, they would not charge admission. It was the gift back to the community as a thank you. Anyone could come in. They usually did it around December, and as sort of like a holiday gift back. And then the gentleman who usually organized that like retired from theater, just got older. So it kind of fell on to me, having participated in it and loving the experience, to make sure it kept going. So then I directed a few more. And
Okay, so you did the Maltese Falcon. What else?
the Maltese Falcon. So then the next year that we were going to do this was pandemic. And I was like, well, hey, pandemic, we can still do radio show. We'll just put release the audio. So I kind of like what I'm doing with you right now. I found voice actors in the, that would record their lines on their phone, send me the files, edit all together, and we did a biography of Marie Curie. That was a radio show drama talking about her life story. And it fit very well because the theater was just about to do, and we had a short window with the pandemic to actually have live stage acting again, the drama Radium Girls, based on the novella Radium Girls, about the girls that painted, the radium-based paint on watches. And so we were trying to connect the two stories together. So we did Radium Girls, Marie Curie, and then the next year, again, we still couldn't have people in, but we still wanted actors to do stuff. So I did 4 short little episodes from 4 completely different genres. We had a sort of a love story from the old radio show Romance. We had a almost Twilight Zone-y thriller from X-1. We had, I'm trying to remember the other ones that were in here. We had a comedy from Fibber McGee and Molly. And so we did 4 little shorts, and I got to bring in a bunch of different people, record it in a big open space, splice it together. Audio quality is crap, but if you go to their YouTube stream or any of the podcasts, you can download the audio recording from the video from the lousy experience. But all the actors got to have fun with doing that. Then we got to go back on stage again, and we did Little Women. We did, oh gosh, I'm trying to think the other one that we did. We did Canterbury Ghost. We've done a variety of classic literature experiences. And then our chairman of the theater, had this idea, hey, what if we release these as a podcast and did a whole like podcast experience? We could then apply for more arts grants that way. And then we could actually create like a little studio within our theater that we can use whenever we need to record something for a show. You know, we want a sound effect, a voice effect. We've got the equipment, but we also have this podcast. And then I had the wild, crazy idea that we need to recreate the original The Adventures of Superman in episodic form, that we release one a week, much like they did. They did like 2 or 3 a week. And here I am mapping this all in my brain. And when I look up all the rights and rules, as far as I can tell, so long as we do not use the S logo, because that's trademarked. We do not use the Superman logo, because that is trademarked. That the actual scripts themselves from the radio show dramas were never actually copyrighted written materials. The comic stories were, but the radio shows were separate stories. And those stories were never submitted for copyright. So we, again, and we're not making money off of this, right? So this is more like kind of like fan fiction kind of stuff. I sat, listened, and transcribed them. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, well, I know this actor would be great for this. And I know this actor would be great for this. And here I am also watching TikTok. And I'm hearing Seppy's TikTok voice. And I'm like, you know what Seppy is? Seppy is Clark Kent. Seppy is Clark Kent. This is exactly the voice that I want. And I do this all the time. Like, I was at the dentist's office, and the lady on the phone, I'm like, do you act? Because you would be my Lois Lane. And unfortunately, she was unavailable. But she just had a great way of diction, pronunciation, characterization in her natural voice. You, as well, have an entertaining to listen to natural voice. You're easy to understand, right? It's clear. Yes, Mrs. Z. He asks random people all the time. I do. We were at trivia the other night, and I was like, if Seppy backs out on me, I need a plan B. If Seppy can't do this, if he's like, this is way too much of a time commitment, Kevin, I'm out. We were at trivia, so I'm like, you know that guy who's hosting trivia?
This is the most Michigan live ever. So Pat's in Michigan, you and Shannon are in Michigan, and then I'm Michigan. This just might as well, like, I'm from Michigan originally. Like, this is just the most Michigan live.
Oh, yeah? What part?
Like, the other parts matter? Like what?
You know, I got to tell you a little side story. Before I moved to Michigan, a person that I knew in college, I was talking about maybe going to Michigan. I was thinking about moving, like, up here. Yeah. And they're like, no. You live here, you go north. You visit here, you live here.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I asked Seppy,
would you be my Clark Kent? When I realized Wisconsin people do this for their state, I was like, what are you doing? Put that hand away. Like,
no.
That's just, no. And they're like, you can't even do that.
It's sweet, but
like when they go talk about the UP and you do this for them and they go crazy, they like the Wisconsin people lose their mind. They're like, I'm like, yeah, like seriously. So we are talking about other gaming related voice acting experiences. Where, as somebody who's doing this, on the regular, where do you see like people applying voice acting either by humans or machines coming up in this space?
You can find, I know someone mentioned it in the comments, that you can find ready to go with an extra like payment option from Foreteller Games. Different publishers have connected with them and have sent them all their narrative content, and they have hired professional voice actors, sound effects, background music that you can then get from their website, and you pay anywhere from $5 to $20 depending on the amount of content that you can then download and then play at your table and have professionals reading your story experience. I think that's a lovely bridge, but I think personally that's an that's a lot of money. For me to want to pay that, for me, I'm going to do it anyway, right? For everyone at my table. I'm in 2 or 3 different legacy games, and they always give me the things to read, right? Because they don't feel comfortable or confident, right, in their own ability to read. And they know I'm going to want it, right? But I feel like it would be a great experience if more and more publishers would provide that, because I found there are a handful of gamers that I play with locally that have difficulty with reading text. And it's a bit surprising when I ask people to do things like you're doing for me for the radio show. People who I know are excellent actors sometimes have difficulty acting while reading.
All right, so
doing the 2 skills at the same
Story.
time is not always natural for everyone.
So Seppy Story, they growing up, before people understood they're neurodivergent people, you just basically had everybody in normal classes and then people in special education. Okay, and so as a kid, they had me in special ed reading because of dyslexia, I can't read out loud. And when the counties shift, and it happens somewhere towards middle school, when they stop asking you to read out loud and went to a written test, I went from this person reads at a 2nd or 4th grade level to this person reads as a senior in high school level, and they shot me from special ed to the advanced kids course.
Yeah. It took some time for people to realize people learn and think differently, right?
Right. It's still really, really weird and more than a little awkward for me to read out loud. You're asking me to play Superman or Clark Kent. It has me confronting a lot of demons, Kevin.
Well, you know what? I am only hearing positive feedback from people that have told me that they listened to the episode.
The positive feedback I have for the episode is the production qualities are crazy. I was not expect for it to be as put together as it was. I've been on a lot of random, homegrown content from, super professional to barely locked down. And I was shocked where in the spectrum of performance this ended up being.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God.
It takes a lot of people to put on this little radio. It's what was it, like 15 minutes or 12 minutes was that one episode? And I spent a good 12 to 15 hours of just editing and polishing and finding.
It's an hour a minute. In general, if you want to
hour a minute
project manage video or sound editing, I say conservatively, if you know what you're doing, it is an hour a minute. Yeah, easy. Shannon, you're so nice. I expect these kind of lies from Kevin because he's a rogue. But Shannon, I expect you to say the truth.
I'm not gonna lie to people. If they're not giving me what I need, I'm gonna tell them you're not giving me what I need.
You are very much the John Waters school of direction. Did you get all the words right? Did you get all the words? All right, we're moving on.
Yes, lying does take a lot of energy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think more publishers should tap into their fan base, and there are a lot of talented people looking for an opportunity to apply their talents for good. If any, TikTok has taught me anything, there are a lot of talented people looking for a place to put their talents.
Yes.
And
I just before our live here, I pulled a handful of games that I have that I feel like it would be the icing on the cake if the publisher or if the community, like this person, that person, took some time to record some of these narrative parts of these board games so that someone who is playing this game who is not great at reading text or wants to have that extra experience for their table because they may not be great at characterization or don't feel that confidence can then go and
Right.
open it up. And I just grabbed a couple, but I would like to ask those that are watching if they have recommendations for games that need it. So I'm going to pull out a couple here, and you tell me if you agree that these are games that could be enhanced with
Number
an
one.
option.
Number one.
Oh, okay.
It should be Clank Legacy.
Yes.
Clank Legacy is my number one because you could do a numbered entry for each one of those. You can make it a Spotify list, and then you just flip to that number. Make sure you don't read, and then you click on it, and you hear the whole thing in the Adventures Incorporated, or whatever the name of that universe is. You could be the voice of that. Yeah, that's really good. 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. There are so many solo RPG experiences that could really use that kind of stuff. And the fact is, for 1,000-Year-Old Vampire and for any of these games, Acquisitions Incorporated. Thank you, Pat. You're wonderful. I would want multiple narrators. I would want, like, hey, you want, like, classic, like, you know, Vincent Price-esque whatever, that's fine. But if you'd rather, like, have different representations of people so you can pick which voice actor fits your internal monologue, like, there's no reason that 1,000-Year-Old Vampire couldn't be a woman.
Okay.
Or somebody who is presents androgynous, right? Like you can any one of those, like, you know, pick your 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. So I see this not going, not only being one, like companies offering one of these things, but a suite of these things where people can, so it's like they can pick. Like, this reaches my, like, would you rather have James Earl Jones or Sigourney Weaver talking to you about the mating cycles of the, like, bluefin whatever?
Yep. All right. Well, I've got a couple on the table I'm going to showcase, and you tell me if I think I'm on target here. Games that would have a potential better experience with voiceover narration.
Good.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times that we've played this, and some people just struggle with having to sit and have this book and reading it through. But as you said with Clank Legacy, you can have number 11. You click that little track, boom, someone's going to read that to you.
Yeah, and it can make like the world's most simple app, where you just click the number and boom. And
well, as Jared was on here earlier, and I asked him about making this app thing, like, there's a lot of legalese that we got to deal with that. Unless publishers give that consent, and then they gets, I don't want to deal with that. But I can post them on the Geek. Mansions of Madness, yes.
Hey, Nick, Mansion of Madness is a great example of this. Any of the modular, like, this happens sort of game where there's tension and everybody crowding around it. You can already feel that kind of thing in Return to the Dark Tower. Like, Return to the Dark Tower literally does this thing. I think one game that would be fantastic with this, and I can't believe that this doesn't exist already, considering how expensive the game is Kingdom Death Monster.
I'm writing these down.
Do you know what the retail price of that game is currently?
No.
$5,000.
What? No.
It is a $5,000 board game, Kevin.
I'm not going to find that at my friendly local game shop.
But you might have a friend who has one. I have 3 friends who have full copies of King. I could never afford that shit. It is fantastic and gruesomely dark. But it could definitely use
voiceover narration.
They do. There are some places that the starter box, of course, is $500.
Okay, so you had asked me once, Seppy, about the why, right? Like, why should we talk to publishers about this? And I'm going to tell you a very specific, and you can help me narrow down this why. Okay. This is a beautiful game. Her story.
It is.
Beautiful, visually beautiful gameplay, beautiful emotional experience of people learning about these forgotten women of history, right? And on the back of each of these cards, we have Nina Simone here. There is
Oh my God, I
her
love Nina
story.
Simone.
There is her story, right? So I have a friend of mine who is dyslexic and also is a mother of children and wants to be able to play this game with them and then have that moment of learning where, hey, you played this card because it had these cute little symbols on it, but let's learn about Nina Simone. And that reading experience for them is a challenge. And it's going to be a very difficult challenge for them. Whereas if they could just go to the page and then just click Nina Simone and then hear, Nina Simone's music inspired many during the civil rights movement because she often wrote and sang about the injustices taking place in the world. She was only 3 or 4 when she started playing the piano. While most people know her for jazz, she also performed blues, folk, gospel, pop, R&B, and classical. That kid is going to get so much more of an experience flipping the card over doing that, but for someone who feels weird or anxious about their own ability to read that and then being put in a spotlight in front of others at the table, that can be a somewhat of a traumatic experience. If we can take that away, I think people are going to be able to get more wrapped into the game.
Nina Simone is an incredible example of a performer who was their best self on stage. Like Robin Williams, Nina Simone, people who struggled with being bipolar and other kinds of issues, who were able to manifest their self that connected them to something larger and most universal when they were in the moment of performing. And that is a special gift / curse. Nina Simone's story really, that's one that gets me. If that started anybody, like somebody hearing about her and then starting a whole Google search and ending up on any number of documentary movies, that would be a great use of connecting gaming with that experience, allowing somebody to see that the game can transcend just from the magic circle to something else out.
In reality, yeah.
No,
so
yeah.
Nick Sparkman said Mom, right? Said Mansions of Madness. We've heard Kingdom Death Monster. What are some other games from people that are viewing or from you, Seppy, that you think could be enhanced or a better tabletop experience other than the TTRPG realm, a traditional board game experience that, you know, if I had this file as an MP3, I'd probably play it at game night. What is a game that comes to mind?
Well, any legacy game fits it because there's a lot of reading. Like flat out, any legacy game fits that. Even if it's not like a one-time through thing. There's a great opportunity for voice acting, obviously, in Pandemic Legacy 0, 1, and 2. Let's see. Classic games, Talisman, Mysterium is a good choice. Yep.
Mysterium.
Yeah, Mysterium.
I'm trying to wonder where would narration be in Mysterium.
Sparkman, help the man out. It's audience participation time at the live. And the warm up, the setup. Like setup is the hardest part. Anyway.
Yeah. See, I think even just rule books themselves, because some people. I just saw a post on some sort of local like Facebook group. Somebody was, it's the one where people always complain. But they were complaining about how hard it is to read a board game rulebook these days because they're just so complicated. I'm like, it's not Candyland anymore.
Like, as somebody who made like an insanely difficult game, like Conquest Princess, I'm not gonna lie, it is 28 or maybe 32 album cover size pages for the instruction book, and that doesn't even include the mission book, which is that many pages, and that doesn't even include the comic book, which is like a little quarter size, adorable. Like they're like specificity, making that more approachable, I think in general is really, really like for Conquest Princess. If somebody could narrate the Learn As You Play tutorial, that would probably be good. I get asked a lot, like, Seppy, how do you like project yourself into the learning experience. That would make everything like. If somebody could help me figure that out, I would be much appreciated. All right.
I know
Well,
a guy.
we spent an hour together. You survived. We are
Mm-hmm.
now in the wrap up. We're now in the wrap up. What can people look forward from Mr. E and the Fenton radio players, Fenton drama radio players? What can people like look forward to coming up?
If you go to your favorite podcasting app and search WFVP Radio, that is our radio podcasting name, or go to fentontheater.org, you can learn more about our upcoming radio episodes. We've got 2 out now. We're episode 2. You get to hear Seppy be Clark Kent, and there is 9 total in this series. I am also directing Hamlet. If you happen to be in Flint, Michigan, the beginning of March, you can watch my interesting take on Hamlet. And then as far as content goes, Mrs. E. Hey, Mrs. E's home. There she is.
Shannon!
We are going to be going to MittenCon, which is in Lansing, Michigan. Yep, right after Valentine's Day to play a bunch of games. And then we're going to go, we're hoping, both Gen Con and Origins. So you can see us there, or we'll talk more about games. Name of it again, WFVP, Fenton Village Players, WFVP Radio. I would pull it up.
Like, that's impossible for my dyslexia to remember. WFBP?
WFVP. It's this. WFVP.
WFBP. Like W, like it's an old radio station.
Call sign. Yep. F for Fenton, V for Village, P for Players. Radio.
Oh, V. Okay, now that makes more sense. All right, WFVP. All right, I'm on board. I'll remember this now. I've been sending the link with all that kind of stuff.
Or you can go to fentontheater.org and find out more about all that our theater does, the plays that are coming up, and there's a little link about the podcast. It is in Spotify. It is in Apple Podcasts. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on all the apps. But you can find and hear Seppy up and away. Can you give us a little bit of Superman right now?
No. So it's a testament to how good a director and
hang on. So you want to meet men?
There is, like, for people who don't know, Kevin has to suffer through my outtakes that I just leave in. Like, old time radio.
So many. There's so many.
Old time radio has a lot of double entendres that modern people cannot, like. Are phrasing? Are we doing that? Yes, we're doing phrasing, and so there's a whole bunch of segments that Kevin now has as blackmail to get me canceled. Like, there's just the adventures of no, we're just not going to even talk about that. But yes, you should go. Like, honestly, I am the least talented person on the show. There are amazing voice actors, and the production quality for this is really, really good. I feel weirdly honored to be included in such a thing. I appreciate that. Otherwise, for Fight in the Box stuff, I figured out my content schedule going through the next 10 weeks. We're going to do 1 post a day here. Of course, we're going to do board game design tip on the YouTubes. We are all gearing up for Conquest Princess content coming up for the February 6th launch. And people should look at stuff from their favorite content creators showing up probably at the end of this month. All right, Kevin, you have been a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for Shannon and Pat hanging out, the Michigan Troop, the entire time. Appreciate both of you. It's as long as there's enough people in the audience that I don't outnumber them.
It was a positive.
It's fantastic. But I haven't figured out. I was supposed to have a guest, but they had a conflict. But I'll figure out our guest for next week, and I'll be back next Wednesday with more creating like positive change in gaming on the live by either making better games, making a better community, or inviting more people to the table. All right, everybody. Last words, Kevin?
Be safe, be sound, be well.
Yeah. Be safe, have fun. Everybody, have a good day.